The United Nations says the humanitarian situation in Gaza is growing more desperate by the hour. The UN agency that oversees aid for Palestinians says its storage facilities in Gaza were broken into, with thousands of people taking vital food supplies. The UN called it a worrying sign that civil order is breaking down. The Israeli military says it attacked 450 Hamas targets over the past day and that it was increasing the number of its forces on the ground in Gaza.
It is the 23rd day of fighting in Gaza. There has been no let-up in Israel's attacks, and it has now declared Gaza City a battlefield. The scale of the destruction is plain to see.
We want the war to stop. We lost our loved ones, our relatives, our children. All my siblings and their children are gone.
With hundreds of homes and buildings in rubble, there is hardly any place left for civilians to seek shelter. A temporary communications blackout only added to the suffering of Gazans.
We couldn't check on our relatives. We've been calling them to check how they're doing, but last night we couldn't. People in the streets have become lifeless bodies walking.
Israel has begun ramping up its ground operations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the war in Gaza would be difficult and long.
Friday evening, more of our ground forces entered into Gaza, the stronghold of Hamas. This is the second phase of the war, and its goals are clear: the destruction of the military and governmental capabilities of Hamas, and bringing home the hostages.
Israel has been telling civilians in northern Gaza to seek safety in the south. But many Gazans fear they might never be able to return to their homes.
Our correspondent Rebecca Ritters is in Sderot, close to the Gaza border in southern Israel. Rebecca, Israel is talking about the second stage of its operation in Gaza. Do we know what this second stage specifically entails?
Well, they haven't given a huge amount of detail on exactly what their military operation is planned or what they've planned, as you can imagine. But we are, from where we're standing, which is just a couple of kilometres from the northeastern Gaza border. Behind us, you can see the city of Beit Hanun. We can hear near continuous strikes, both artillery, airstrikes, also mortar strikes. And I've also been able to hear this morning, we're actually at the moment having a little bit of a lull. It's been relatively quiet in the last few moments, but earlier this morning we could hear both heavy and light machine gun fire, suggesting that there is actually combat happening on the ground. We've been able to also see through some zoom lens some tanks on the other side. So there I can just hear an outgoing fire there make landfall in Beit Hanun. And so we are seeing and hearing that second phase. We know that they've ramped up ground forces. The Israeli military have ramped up ground forces inside Gaza, and that is certainly part of the second phase, as Benjamin Netanyahu was calling it last night. Exactly the tactics we don't know. We think it is less likely to be this major ground invasion, ground incursion that we were first thinking and talking about. We're seeing those huge troop numbers. Now it looks more likely that they're going to continue with this kind of slower ebb. They did say it was going to take a very long time, and it certainly seems at the moment that they're trying to encircle certain cities, particularly Gaza City.
So you can hear occasionally artillery fire, and no doubt you've seen some trace of the fighting in the form of smoke rising over Gaza. But I wonder, is there any information trickling out about the degree of resistance Israeli forces are getting from Hamas at this point?
I'll just say that it isn't actually that infrequent. What we're hearing Also fighter jets overhead at the moment. It's actually been quite constant. Just at the moment we're seeing a little bit of a reprieve, although I think it's about to pick up again. In terms of Hamas fighting back, it's almost impossible for us to know exactly what's happening on the ground. In fact, it is impossible. We don't get these updates in real time, and of course no journalists or anyone else in fact is able to get access to inside the Gaza border. So in terms of how significantly they're fighting back, I don't know. They have said, Hamas I'm talking about, have said that they are ready for a ground invasion, that they've been preparing for this. It will have come to no surprise to them, Israel's reaction to the events of October 7. So they'd say that they are prepared. They of course know the Strip very well. They've in fact built these underground tunnel networks and know the lay of the land incredibly well. They say they're prepared and they say they're ready to fight back. We do know that a couple of soldiers, two in fact, one injured severely and another one moderately. They're the figures that we have so far, but of course the longer this goes on, the more casualties we're likely to see.
Rebecca, we only have about 20 seconds or so, but I do want to ask you, we understand the communication network appears to be working again in Gaza. What do you hear from there?
I've actually, in fact, just been in touch with a colleague of ours in Gaza. They have been able to restore communication. He's been able to recharge, in fact, his Israeli SIM card and be able to, again, have access to the outside world. But we know that the situation there, the humanitarian situation, is increasingly dire. You've been reporting on it. And, that's been backed up with what he had to say. He, in fact, said that he had heard about these raids, these UNRWA raids. Can hear some firing again there. The having of the warehouses, so people in a very dire situation on the other side of the border.
Rebecca Ritters from Sderot in southern Israel, many thanks. Let's welcome Ahmed Bayram, Media and Communications Advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council, an independent organization that protects the rights of people affected by displacement. He joins us from Amman. Ahmed, welcome. What are your colleagues in Gaza telling you about the situation there?
Thanks for having me. Actually, we managed to get a short message from one of our 54 colleagues on the ground in Gaza. It was a 58-second message in which he said that signal was back, network was back, but they still don't know what was happening around them. He reported not being able to identify where the sound of the next bomb was going to come from or where it was coming from. He wasn't able to know if the rest of his family was alive or not. Today, this morning, the full scale of what happened over the past 36 hours is starting to reveal, and the numbers are starting to jump, the number of killed and injured. Hospitals cannot cope, and there are people still stuck under the rubble who were not able to find someone to call the ambulance. So, sadly, it's going from bad to worse in Gaza at the moment.
The UN says there are worrying signs that civil order is breaking down. We in the media have been reporting for days now that people are running out of food and water. When will that likely happen for sure? And what do you fear the breaking point will look like?
It is happening. I mean, we keep warning about it happening, but it is happening already. There are people who are literally surviving off one loaf of bread a day, plus probably some salty water. It is happening. We're just not seeing them live on television. There are people who are taking turns to get hold of a bag of bread. There are people who are spending 5 hours to just find one bottle of petrol that they can use to pump water out into their homes. I think the trickle of aid that is arriving across the border from Gaza is giving the impression that aid is arriving. And while this is true, it is nowhere near enough. So there is a humanitarian catastrophe already happening. We've heard about, hospitals having to do without painkillers and children having to drink contaminated water. So it is all unfolding, and it's all about now stopping that from getting worse, from killing more people. We don't know for sure how many people are dying from all these other causes. We know about the bombardment that is intensifying almost everywhere in Gaza. This is why we need more aid urgently for those people.
Are Gazans responding to Israeli calls for them to move south of the Wadi Gaza Valley?
Yes, and no, because I've heard accounts of people making their way to southern Gaza, realizing that life was not much safer there. There was still constant bombardment. We have seen that, rockets hitting and bombs hitting homes, residential homes. And then my colleagues told me about relatives who made their way back from southern Gaza to northern Gaza. And again, from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. I mean, that tells me there's no safe spot, there's no safe corner in Gaza, whether that is because of bombardment, whether that is because of, the basics of life, the bread, the water, the food. And just to say here, finally, a respite in Gaza at the moment is getting a full 2 hour of a nap during the day, because there is just simply no chance you can get any sleep during the night.
Goodness. That is Ahmed Bayram from the Norwegian Refugee Council. Many thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.